território venezuelano é descarregar a aeronave, reposicionar a carga para fora da aeronave, os passageiros, de modo que todo mundo consiga cumprir sua missão da forma que foi anunciado.
Para quebrar uma laje, para fazer um seguramento, para fazer uma retirada de uma máquina.
O modal aéreo é um modal que se sobrepõe a esse tipo de dificuldade, né? Então, quando a gente tem problemas de fluxo de logístico, o modal aéreo ele é uma solução. Então, para isso que nós estamos aqui. Estávamos recentemente, de imediato, né, voltando de uma missão humanitária na Bolívia, e agora fomos reposicionados justamente pela versatilidade e presteza que esse tipo de vetor nos dá para cumprir essa missão.
Dali ya. Dapat kami. Raay, dali. Follow me. May butang din. Kaya sana i-dali na lang din. Bawasan kami. Ganang pusil. Kunay, kuha niya ba kanay? Saan niya siya uwi? Kunay, kukuha ba kay turn on?
España, que hace algunos minutos compartíamos con ustedes el arribo. En esta oportunidad es en las adversidades y estamos seguros que estamos asumiendo, bueno, con resiliencia, con responsabilidad, cada uno, toda la situación que se ha generado. Nos unimos a ese llamado que hacía el presidente de la Asamblea Nacional, el doctor Jorge Rodríguez, con respecto a usando estas labores. Hay muchísimas maneras de colaborar con los venezolanos afectados en esta zona. Se han dispuesto centros de acopio, lugares donde se maneja logística, donde hay voluntariado, utilizando maquinaria que ya se encuentra en el lugar y que confirmó el vicepresidente para...
de perros de búsqueda registrados para actuar este trauma.
Está compartiendo imágenes de nuestro país y que, bueno, a medida que van llegando, inmediatamente se van incorporando a las labores de rescate, tal cual como se había acordado hace años. Estamos haciendo esta cobertura, ya se había confirmado la red de confianza, una conexión inmediata, y ese rescatista que también ejercita esos mecanismos, esos primeros auxilios psicológicos a alguien, también lo...
Hay un protocolo específico, hay ciertas palabras, ciertas señales que se necesitan en ese momento. Sí, a veces solamente contacto visual y poner la mano en el hombro, entonces ves la expresión del otro, desestresarse un segundo y luego volver a la acción.
Hay algunas estrategias individuales que puedan ser aplicadas.
So pwede na din mahawa mga gamit. Nanak po.
Vinimos a la embajada para un tema de solicitar una autorización para que nos dejaran viajar a Venezuela a prestar el servicio y el apoyo a las personas. Entramos y a la media hora nos dieron respuesta y ya nos autorizaron y ya vamos a preparar los equipos para salir inmediatamente a Venezuela.
Vamos a llevar 12 especialistas en todo lo que es desastres, en búsqueda de estructuras colapsadas, paramédicos, K9 y expertos en drones.
Los estamos invitando a que vengan aquí, que es el centro de acopio. Estamos en Schiller 326, Polanco, que es en la Embajada de la República Bolivariana de Venezuela en México. Este es el lugar donde las personas que vengan van a tener la certeza que va a llegar, porque por medios oficiales se va a tener que llevar todo este acopio. Estamos solicitando alimentos no perecederos, latas, atún, leche en polvo, arroz, harina pan, alimento para bebé. También estamos solicitando higiene personal, dentífricos, cepillos, jabón, papel higiénico, toallas, pañales para adultos, pañales para niños, también alimento para animales, frazadas nuevas, en medicamentos, analgésicos, antiinflamatorios, material para curación.
Wala kuan ra tatsin. Kunya na kay na may kuan mo dito kanay mangga. Nya na kay mukaon pa tag rice man. Kunya na bi mapagipagsakan ako oh. Tataod siya. Kunya na ba?
Siya po naugo dito.
Magtuto. Kunya na panito
What,
ako
sagot?
lagi kuan ato. Kay mukaon pagalig rice ketchup sa ba?
Principalmente son especialidades de búsqueda y rescate, lo que internacionalmente se conoce como los equipos SAR, Search and Rescue. Entonces, ellos también tienen habilidades especiales, están formados también en primeros auxilios, llevamos paramédicos de combate también que puedan dar asistencia inmediata a las personas que se encuentran. Quiero resaltar la labor que va a realizar el CAN de Senapro junto con su guía canino, que a pesar de que es su primera misión internacional, está certificada en este tipo de tareas. Así que estamos seguros que este equipo institucional va a hacer un gran trabajo representando a todos los panameños en Venezuela. Te recordó que cuando...
Recibimos la comunicación de la Federación Internacional de Sociedades de la Cruz Roja que se logró gestionar entre la Cruz Roja Internacional y Copa la donación del vuelo Para el traslado de 16 rescatistas de Cruz Roja costarricense junto con 2.3 toneladas de carga, que son equipos especializados de búsqueda y rescate, toldos, alimentación.
Donald Trump loves maps. And as US President, he gets to look at lots and lots of very cool maps. One day in 2018, he was looking at maps in Key West, Florida. These maps belonged to the Coast Guard, and they showed suspected smuggling vessels off the US coast.
Using the Pacific, using the Caribbean, using everything they could use to get through.
After he toured the naval station and looked at the submarine, he and his team headed back to Washington. Miles Taylor, a member of his team, has an anecdote that he says happened on board the plane.
I'm sitting there with Stephen Miller and a senior member of the Coast Guard.
This is Taylor speaking to the Left Hook with Wajahat Ali about a conversation he witnessed between Trump's senior advisor Stephen Miller and the head of the US Coast Guard about those boats on the big map.
And Miller's grilling us on whether we could launch drone strikes on these boats. I will never forget the Coast Guard commandant saying to Miller, "No, we can't do this. It would be a violation of international law." Stephen, in his very unique voice, said, "Commandant, I don't think you understand international law."
Now, that's not actually a bad impression of Stephen Miller.
Monstrous violation of international law.
Now, Stephen Miller denies ever having that conversation with the Coast Guard Admiral about using drone strikes on boats in the Caribbean Sea. And yet, fast forward to the second Trump administration, and
for the second time in 2 weeks, the American military has destroyed a boat allegedly smuggling drugs from Venezuela into the US.
American drones, reportedly following a plan created by Stephen Miller, started bombing boats in the Caribbean.
The Washington Post has reported a follow-up strike was ordered on a vessel in September to kill 2 people who survived the initial one, raising concerns on both sides of politics about whether a war crime was committed.
There was once a simpler time when ordering a missile strike on people who are drowning in the ocean would be considered a
monstrous violation of international law.
But it seems we are no longer in that time.
In the enforcement of immigration laws,
Stephen Miller is unusual for a number of reasons. He's one of only a handful of staffers from the first Trump administration to carry over into the second.
Stephen, thank you for doing an unbelievable job.
He's also one of the few original Trump staffers not to have written a tell-all memoir. But if you read any of the memoirs by people who have written them, they're full of stories like this, of people desperately trying to stop Stephen Miller from implementing his ideas.
As long as Stephen Miller is in charge of negotiating immigration, we're going nowhere. He's been an outlier for years.
For a long time, no matter which party was in power, the US government has operated within pretty defined guardrails. Legal, moral, bureaucratic, and procedural guardrails. But now, thanks to people like Stephen Miller, those guardrails are being dismantled, or in some cases destroyed entirely.
to all ICE officers, you have federal immunity in the conduct of your duties. And anybody who lays a hand on you, or tries to stop you, or tries to obstruct you, is committing a felony.
Obviously, Greenland should be part of the United States. And so that's a conversation that we're going to have. The powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned.
So who is Stephen Miller, and how did he get into such a position of power? And is there anything that can get in his way?
You cannot terrify us, you cannot frighten us, you cannot threaten us.
I'm Matt Bevan, and this is If You Listen. In the United States, there's a program for high school students run by the American Legion called Boys State.
Boys State and Girls State. 1 week, it shapes a lifetime.
It's kind of a camp for teenage politics nerds.
You'll experience how government works. Some people say they're a sports junkie. I say I'm a politics junkie.
The harder the conflict, the more glorious the triumph. Its alumni list is impressive. Neil Armstrong, Michael Jordan, John Bon Jovi, Bruce Springsteen, Bill Clinton, and Tom Brokaw.
I've encountered governors and senators, captains of industry, and prominent academics who also have the same fond memories of their experience at Boys State.
At the California iteration of Boys State in 2002, a 16-year-old Stephen Miller was running for an elected position on one of the mock county councils. Miller gave a speech to the other teenage boys in his group, gathered under a tree at California State University. Miller paced back and forward, declaring at the top of his voice that if elected, he would form a black ops force to spy on the other county groups, infiltrate them, and sabotage them. The boys loved it, of course. Miller won with a resounding majority. To say he was interested in politics would be an understatement. He was a regular caller on right-wing talkback radio, primarily on the Larry Elder Show, and wrote letters to the local paper decrying the left-wing bias of his school teachers. That same year, at his high school in Santa Monica, Miller ran for class president and gave a similarly outrageous speech.
I'm the only candidate up here who really stands out.
There are only a few clips available from his speech, but the quote that gets the most attention is this one.
Am I the only one who is sick and tired of being told to pick up my trash when we have plenty of janitors who are paid to do it for us?
At the end of his speech, he refused to stop talking and had to be escorted off stage. His behaviour at school was so unusual that one of his classmates made a little documentary about him.
I don't know much about him, but I know that he's pretty right-wing.
He expresses his views in an insulting way, and that makes him look like he has no integrity. And that's really unfortunate because he could really be a great politician.
The following year, when the US invasion of Iraq began, Miller was recorded by a classmate giving his opinion on what should happen to the Iraqi leadership.
Well, but as for Saddam Hussein and his henchmen, I think the ideal solution would be to cut off their fingers. I don't think it's necessary to kill them entirely. We're not a barbaric people. We respect life. Therefore, torture is the way to go. Because tortured people can live. Torture is a celebration of life and human dignity.
The thing that interests me about these comments is, what is Miller doing here? Does he actually want to be able to spy on his classmates and be able to chuck his trash on the ground? Or is he trolling? Is he saying things that he knows are over the line, knowing that he will get a reaction from his audience? Well, he kind of answers that question himself.
I will say and I will do things that no one else in their right mind would say or do.
One of his classmates had a theory.
Maybe he enjoys the infamy, like some perverted power trip or something, which I think is completely disgusting.
His friend Chris Moritz thought that people who got angry at Stephen Miller just didn't understand his sense of humour.
Personally, I would have laughed at that. He's just joking. It's a joke.
Watching these old videos of Miller, he clearly thinks that he's being funny, whether or not his audience is laughing.
I was talking to my doctor the other day, and I said to him, well, you know, I'm 17, I'm pretty sexy. Everything's going the way I want it to.
I was a teenage boy at roughly the same time Stephen Miller was, and I can tell you confidently that trolling, saying outrageous things to get a reaction, is very much a thing that teenage boys did at the time.
But something's just not going right. My hair is just receding. I look like I'm 35, and a balding 35-year-old at that. And he said, well, how much sleep are you getting? And I said, excuse me, what's sleep? Apparently, you're supposed to go to bed at nighttime. Usually, I sit in my room like this. Ha! Ha!
Stephen seems to have pitched himself as a class clown, an edgelord, a troll. So, what happens when an edgelord who breaks societal norms and delights when people get upset reaches a position of power?
Jim, I appreciate your speech.
Well, we got a clear idea of this in the early stages of the first Trump administration, when Stephen Miller challenged one of the most well-established myths about America's history and identity.
America is for Americans and Americans only.
This story involves, probably know it, but in case you don't, here's the current Secretary of State Marco Rubio reading it when he was still a senator back in 2012.
Here at our sea-washed sunset gates shall stand a mighty woman with a torch, whose flame is the imprisoned lightning, and her name, Mother of Exiles.
When this poem about the Statue of Liberty was written in the 1870s, the only physical manifestation in America of the mighty woman with a torch was the torch itself. It stood in Madison Square Park, held by a disembodied bronze hand and lit up by electricity, or, to put it more poetically, the imprisoned lightning. The statue's head and body were still in Paris. It was to be a gift to America from the French government and would be placed on a 30-metre granite pedestal.
From her beacon hand glows worldwide welcome. Her mild eyes command the air-bridged harbor that twin cities frame.
The trouble was, while the French were happy to pay for the statue, they expected the Americans to fund the $250,000 pedestal, and the Americans were in a recession and couldn't afford it. So a fundraiser was created. A successful 33-year-old Jewish poet named Emma Lazarus was asked to donate a poem which would then be auctioned to raise funds.
She imagined the sight of a giant statue at the entry point of a great nation. But unlike the great monuments of the past, this would not signal an empire. Instead, it would signal one's arrival to a place of opportunity and refuge and freedom.
Her handwritten manuscript was sold at auction for $1,500. Thousands of other Americans donated money to build the pedestal, and by 1886 it was ready for the 350-piece statue to be assembled on top of it. Emma Lazarus died of cancer a year later, aged 38. In 1903, a plaque with her poem on it was added to the pedestal. Her words became a core principle of America, as wave after wave of immigrants entered the country during the 20th century.
Give me your tired and your poor, your huddled masses.
Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses.
Your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free.
Support for Emma Lazarus's powerful words became bipartisan. As Marco Rubio said in 2012,
"This is who we were. For 225 years, this is who we've been. And the question now is this who we will remain? If we lose this, we lose ourselves."
In August of 2017, Stephen Miller, now a staffer in the first Trump administration, was asked how a plan put forward by the president to decrease immigration intake and prioritise English-speaking migrants for entry aligned with the meaning of Emma Lazarus's poem.
What you're proposing, or what the president is proposing here, does not sound like it's in keeping with American tradition when it comes to immigration. The Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free." It doesn't say anything about speaking English.
Here's Stephen Miller's response.
I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's a symbol of American liberty lighting the world. The poem that you're referring to that was added later is not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty.
There is no way that any White House staffer in living memory would have considered saying this. Lazarus's words have become as significant as the American flag or the national anthem.
If we walk away from this, we walk away from what makes us different and special and unique from all the nations on the earth.
But Stephen Miller wasn't like any other White House staffer in living memory, and it appears he wants to make that fact known.
We go now to the White House briefing room and President Trump's senior policy advisor, Stephen Miller.
During Trump's first term, Miller made headlines for attacking the independence of the judicial branch.
We have a judiciary that has taken far too much power and become, in many cases, a supreme branch of government. One unelected judge in Seattle cannot remake laws for the entire country.
Couldn't quite suppress a grin there, but he wasn't done.
Our opponents, the media, and the whole world will soon see, as we begin to take further actions, that the powers of the president to protect our country are very substantial and will not be questioned.
This interview was received by the media and the whole world exactly as you would expect it to be received.
Will not be questioned? Let me test that theory. What the are you talking about? The president will not
being questioned? You're unworthy to be in the White House. You're unworthy to be in government if that's what you believe.
The only way that statement could be more terrifying is if he yelled it in German.
To most government employees, this level of direct personal criticism would be tough to take. But for a troll, this is part of the payoff.
I will say and I will do things that no one else in their right mind would say or do.
According to the memoirs of former staffers, Miller was a lot. He was so relentless in his efforts to enact tough immigration policies that people were actually kind of scared of him. Career officials in the Department of Homeland Security